There's a strange moment that happens right before you agree to something you don't want to do. Your brain knows the answer is no. The word forms clearly in your mind, travels toward your mouth, and somewhere in that short distance, it vanishes. What comes out instead is some version of sure, of course, no problem. And you hear yourself saying it like you're watching someone else operate your body. There's a part of you that was watching the whole time. It had the no ready, it knew exactly what you wanted, and it watched almost in slow motion as that no dissolved into compliance. You are simultaneously the person who knows what she wants and the person who can't seem to act on it. And that gap between knowing and doing is where the real pain lives. The thing that stings afterward isn't really the thing you agreed to. It's the way you feel about yourself for agreeing. You come home, close the door, and the replay starts. Why did I say yes? I didn't want to do that. I had a whole sentence ready. And you sit with this quiet exhaustion that's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't felt it. Not anger at the other person. Something turned inward. A low-grade frustration with yourself that's become so familiar you barely notice it most days. When you try to make sense of why you do this, the explanation usually lands somewhere harsh. You're just too soft. You have no backbone. You care too much what people think. And over time, you stop saying I sometimes struggle to say no and start believing something more permanent. You've taken a behavior and turned it into an identity. You're not someone who has a hard time with this. You've become, in your own mind, a weak person, someone who bends, and that label is heavier than any single favor you've ever said yes to. But think about the rest of your life for a moment. The decisions you make at work that nobody questions. The moments when someone you care about needs protecting and you suddenly find a voice you didn't know you had. The areas where you're decisive, clear, even fierce. If you were actually weak, that weakness would show up everywhere. It wouldn't clock in and out depending on the situation. The no sits fully formed in your throat. Your body tenses with the intention to say it, and then something overrides you. That's not a character flaw. That's a mechanism. And those are different things. Here's what that mechanism actually looks like. A situation appears where someone wants something from you. Before you can even evaluate what you want, your body has already responded. Shoulders tightening, breathing getting shallow, a slight closing in the throat. And in that fraction of a second, your system decides the safest available move is to comply. So you say yes. And for a brief moment, the anxiety drops, the danger has passed. But within hours, sometimes minutes, the regret arrives. And then comes the part of the loop that does the most damage, the internal attack. Why am I like this? I should have said no. Next time I will. But that attack raises your baseline anxiety, which makes you more likely to comply the next time. You're not breaking the loop by being hard on yourself. You're feeding it. And this loop has costs you may not have fully named yet. It's not just the exhaustion after saying yes, it's the slow accumulation of a life lived slightly to the side of yourself. There are friendships where you've been so busy being who they needed you to be that you're not sure they've ever actually met you. There are Saturday afternoons you gave away because someone asked and you couldn't locate your own preference fast enough to protect it. There are versions of yourself you've built specifically for certain people, and maintaining all those versions is a quiet, full-time job. The cost isn't just tiredness. The cost is gradually losing track of what you actually want because you've been scanning the room for what everyone else needs for so long that your own signal has gone faint. If you trace this loop back far enough, it stops looking like a personality problem and starts looking like something your nervous system learned to do. There was a time, early in your life, when you depended on people who held significant power over your sense of safety. And at some point, your young brain made a discovery. When you made those people happy, things felt safer. When you disappointed them, safety seemed to withdraw. This wasn't a conscious calculation. It was a survival adaptation made by a brain still building its understanding of how relationships work. The strategy was simple and effective. Scan the environment, figure out what the other person needs, provide it before they have to ask. And in return, you got something that felt like acceptance. Like the world not falling apart. Your nervous system encoded this deeply. Other people's satisfaction equals safety. Other people's disappointment equals threat. What your brain did back then made complete sense given the environment you were in. You couldn't leave. You couldn't fight. You couldn't set adult boundaries as a child. But you could adapt, and you did. You became exquisitely skilled at reading others, anticipating needs, smoothing tension, shape-shifting into whatever version of yourself would keep the peace. That wasn't weakness. That was intelligence operating under constraint. And here's the part that's hard to take in. but changes everything once you do. It's still running. The old program is still active in the background, silently, automatically, without asking for your conscious input. When someone's expression shifts, when a request hangs in the air, when there's even a hint of potential conflict, your body reacts according to rules that were written decades ago. You feel the urge to comply before you've even decided what you think. And because this program has been running for so long, you've mistaken it for your personality. You've called it weakness, you've called it having no backbone. But it's not who you are. It's a protection system that hasn't been informed the war is over. This is why being harsh with yourself has never solved the problem. You've been trying to shame yourself out of a survival strategy. That doesn't work because the strategy was never about logic. It's about felt safety encoded in your body. Every time you call yourself spineless after people-pleasing, you're adding more threat to a system already operating in threat detection mode. You can't bully yourself into feeling safe enough to say no. You don't need to immediately stop people-pleasing. That demand is too large, and it just becomes another reason to feel like you're failing. What actually shifts things is something quieter. The next time it happens, the next time you notice yourself agreeing when you don't want to, just notice it. Don't attack yourself for it. Don't replay the shame cycle. Just register what happened. That was the old program. That was my nervous system doing what it learned to do a long time ago. It thought it was keeping me safe. That recognition, that small moment of seeing the pattern without judgment, is more powerful than any forceful attempt to change. Because you're no longer fighting yourself. You're starting to understand yourself. And from that understanding, actual change becomes possible. Not because you finally got tough enough, because you finally got clear enough about what you're actually dealing with. You were running old code that once kept you safe, and now you know it's code. That changes everything. If this kind of quiet recognition is what you come here for, subscribe. There's more of this when you're ready for it.